Good day, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Babbling Hits podcast. I go by the name of Perspective. We have Mantle here. Shaq has turned into a woman. Stop making fun of Shaq. We have Thule and we have Zain. And yes,
Okay, so last week we had a podcast with Irfan Pierce, and then something came up. We spoke, the conversation went to safe spaces, and editing it, I felt a bit bad because I couldn't really explain through my stuttering. I couldn't really explain properly what a safe space is.
Okay.
And the thing is, I feel really guilty because my brother Zain, that I've known for decades. I met him when he was 3 years old or 4. He does safe spaces, and for the life of me, I couldn't
you were
articulate
swag,
properly what a safe space is. So,
Swagness. I just played.
yeah. So basically, this is to just to explain what a safe space is for people like myself that doesn't really know what it is. I'm going to play a clip.
You're not the only one. I also don't.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I'm going to play a clip of the part of the podcast, but I have to say that this is in no shape, way, or form a bash on Irfan.
Yeah.
So to the guests, please refrain from bashing him. However, my co-presenter, he can take all the
He's
brunt
got the
of-
liberty to do that.
Maybe I'll take it.
Yeah, so let me just play this. It's like myself and my friend Mr. Zain. So I was like telling dude, I want like gay people on and whatever.
Yes,
but I wanted to be a fun experience. But then I told him, dude, I've realized that I can't make fun of you guys when there's people dying because of that. I'm actually ahead, and I must just live more in the times of now. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean, like,
Now I'm just making an example
like
of
you saying that you can't make fun of gay people?
yeah, like have a podcast where we just have fun and don't talk about the seriousness of the matter. Just have fun type of thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can't. We're not there yet. I can't. I make fun of it. Where I say I call it the alphabet people.
What?
The alphabet people. But then we saw the data down.
Which one?
Anyway,
I think it was his first one back on Netflix. And
Yeah.
he was like saying like you know the LGBT community
Oh, yeah.
plus. So he calls it the alphabet people because we just add on another letter when there's something. The alphabet feature.
yeah. So basically, I told him, dude, I don't want this the normal narrative where we talk about I want to show people the fun side. But then we spoke about it. And I told him I'm actually beginning to realize that I can't have that podcast yet
Because if you
we
think
get
about
some signs of it, but we're gonna have to talk about because we're not there yet where we can.
I'm good. Let me ask you a question.
I'm just making an example. but
Yeah. So I mean, like, that's a good conversation because I mean, I've got some heavy issues with some of the things you're saying and stuff. I don't believe that we should be a society where we are suddenly auditing what we're saying and how we're saying and stuff. Context is important. I mean, if I am with my gay friend, whatever, and we're discussing whatever, am I not allowed to make jokes or make fun of him?
No, I'm definitely the same. I'm definitely at the same point of view. But the thing is, I've realized that I need to tone down a bit because there are people that might take that conversation and that joke and link it to people killing each other or people.
No, but I mean, I personally don't. I've never experienced that sort of issue where I've lost friends or family or being beaten down for being gay. Or maybe I just don't know enough gay people.
No,
That's highly possible. That's highly possible. What I do know is that, like, I know enough people of color who got fucked up.
Yeah.
Wrong place, wrong time, get shot, maimed, whatever. So my trip is we must be careful not to take an international campaign
Yeah.
that now superimposes itself in our space over here when we have other issues that are just as pressing, if not more so.
No, but the thing is, my friend, he creates safe spaces.
Yeah, but why do you need safe spaces? the whole fucking city should be safe. It's like okay.
I can't defend that because I'm not.
You're saying, but I just want to explain something. Like, just to make a analogy. Why is there no colored safe spaces? The idea of it's ridiculous.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would definitely not agree with you there. The thing is, the reason why you say that is because we're not living that reality.
No, but when I say colored safe spaces, I'm talking about like kids being shot the fuck up on the Cape Flats.
Yeah. Definitely. Everybody wants the same thing. We can't say why we are in that safe space but not this safe space. It's almost like
I'm not questioning the safe space. I'm simply saying that like from a logical standpoint, we are taking a particular stance that I don't think changes the thinking. The thinking of the people needs to change. Being gay in our society needs to be normalized. Not have a special space for them. It's like unpassed class for slow kids. We don't have to deal with slow kids. We put them over there. You get what I'm saying? It's problematic for me because it doesn't solve the problem. We are basically creating a nice special department for them, like a lumber over there. I
don't think that's what they're trying to do.
I know they're not, but they're consciously doing it.
I think what they're trying to do is first and foremost for them to come out. Not that I'm not speaking. I'm not no authority on the, but I think they create a space because they have to live a lie basically. So they make it like this room where they do the kind of say this game. So that is it's. I don't think we can fathom it because we're not gay.
I think, but also I understand where you're coming from. Remember, it's the same analogy that I made with the parks in North Pine where they're now putting like fence around or whatever. What is that constantly sending to the kid that wants to go play on the park?
Yeah, but
like now the fence.
The thing is, we can say that because we are not gay. If we
no, but I don't agree. It's like it's very much similar to this men on trash movement where the movement is about us as men, but yet we are not allowed to speak on the topic because we're not women. But the problem is us apparently. So
so we need to speak about it.
We should be speaking about it. And the thing is like your approach is super important. I don't believe that, for example, that you can have create a silo for yourself and have a conversation amongst your own. Doesn't solve the issue. If you want solutions, now if the safe space is created just for them, so there's a support group and there's space for gay people to interact and find materials and resources to deal with their particular issues socially, then great stuff. I got no issue with that. Then that's fine. But what I'm saying is that like I don't like, for example, the fact that we still have colored communities. Exclusively colored communities is a vada.
Okay, so that's about it. So again, I want to
reiterate
that we're not going to bash Irfan. Is what I liked about him as a guest, he could articulate a lot of stuff, and it's well thought out, man. And something I can learn from that. But like we had a couple of our first episodes, we spoke about people. And then I realized that it was a bit unfair because we didn't have both sides of the story. So I learned from that. So basically, I don't want a gay lady to watch the 8th episode and see, but what is this? This isn't explaining what safe spaces is or whatever. And I feel that with this episode, we just want to make it that much but more clear. But again, if you want to bash someone, my esteemed colleague here,
I'm the punching bag tonight. Okay. But before we get there, I think Tuli and Zain just needs to give us introduce themselves and just give us like a short bio about yourselves.
Okay, so
and the organization.
So my name is Zain. Like Nanto said, I grew up with him. And also, as I grew up, I also found out that I'm quite different from all the rest from the boys. And the reason why I'm here today is to have a conversation about LGBTI people and also why we create safe spaces for them. And also and I also know Tuli in the space, and I know she's very experienced and also knowledgeable about the topic. That's why I reached out to her, and I want to thank her for being here today, to taking up her time and have this conversation. And it's not about bashing anybody. I think it's important for everybody to know what is actually happening out there if they don't.
Thank you very much, Zain, for the invite and the very brief intro. My name is Tuli. My full name is Nokuthula. When I was young, I realized to get an email address with that name was going to be impossible. So I changed it and shortened it to Tuli.
Okay.
I am a human rights activist. I'm a Pan-African feminist. I've just recently reclaimed those three titles because I feel it's important in terms of what I stand for as a female Black body. I've been in activism for the last 10 years. I've worked with youth in conflict with the law. I've worked with people living with other abilities, and now working within the sector of LGBTI. With regards to acronyms, I mean lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer identifying persons. Sometimes we add plus because then there's asexual persons, polyamory, and so forth. So I'm currently working in an organization named the Inclusive and Affirming Ministries, and we've been around for 24 years. It's our 25th birthday next year. And we work with within the sector of faith, specifically Christianity, in working with denominations, communities, parents, families, and friends, in creating inclusive and affirming spaces of worship.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was a mouthful. So,
Yes.
episode is done. That's all we need.
And it didn't even take 3 hours.
Okay, so my first question is the joke, the other people, is it offensive?
It's yeah. To me, it's offensive.
Yes.
But
Because
did you watch the Dave Chappelle show?
No,
he was the one that came up with it.
yeah, I don't know him.
Yeah, that's not my joke.
But because people are living with these identities, I think it's not a joke. People do get killed. People do get thrown out of their homes. Rejection. I mean, I'm living proof of some of these things that I've mentioned. But I mean, to have that identity, it's no joke.
I think it comes back down to language. If you're saying alphabet people, then already it's like this terminology that is not really affirming to a person's identity or expression. So, for example, I mean, there's this there's a joke around, I think it was David Cow who made it, where he was saying, Amandla, and everybody's going, away too, and then a gay guy goes, Amandla, guys. Now, that's separate because it's laughing with people. But the minute when you start labeling people and saying alphabet people, it's like using the N word with Black African Americans. Yes, it's funny between us being Black African Americans calling each other the N word. But should someone else who's not part of our community use that, then it's offensive. But also the whole fact of we're all on our different journeys in terms of reconciling our identities and being comfortable with certain terminology. So you get people who will say, oh, I don't mind being called queer or istabane, while other people find it very offensive and they don't feel comfortable with that term.
So if you were to make a joke, like myself and Zain, you know what I'm saying? If I do like to you, surely that should be like.
That's fine with me. I mean,
But
we know each other.
obviously not gonna make. But I'm realizing that this platform obviously goes to people that I don't know. So
Yeah, and I think that is actually one of the main sticky points with the current hate crimes bill, because now we're currently stuck on hate speech and what is the definition of hate speech, and I mean, now can we now make jokes where you have a white comedian who puts brown paint on their face and makes
Yeah.
jokes and mimics black people, and how far can we go until it's acceptable?
Yeah.
So we're currently stuck on how do we define hate speech? When does it become we'd cross over and now it becomes offensive? And I mean, what you were sharing with Zain, I mean, you guys have a history of being together, being friends since crash days. So obviously you have your own inside jokes, which for Zayn will be fine. But should you crack a joke maybe about, I don't know, some silly joke about women being in the kitchen and I'm around and I don't know your history. For me, I might be still a budding feminist and I'll be like, no, actually,
I must
I
echo
don't
that
agree
also,
with
right?
that.
He's
Why
got
does females have short, small feet? So they can be closer to the stove.
Wow. Wow.
Yo, low
Wow.
blows, low blows, low blows.
Okay, so I just had to get it out. Get it out.
But then also, you have a responsibility to your listeners as well, and you have to exercise discretion, not to offend people, and also not to assume that you're speaking to one homogeneous group. And I think that's something that's very sensitive because we might feel that, oh, it's a joke and we all laugh about it, but it might land in a way that's not acceptable to some other people.
And I think that's why he decided to invite the two of you. I think initially Zayn was going to be a
Yeah.
guest on the podcast, but I think also we kind of brought that earlier to the fore because of maybe people misconstruing what Irfan is trying to say. I think also
Or you. Or you.
or me. Yeah, I think also, I always say that whatever we say, I mean, there's always three stages to something. There's always like it starts with thought, and then it becomes word, and then it becomes action. And usually, when you say something, you have thought it through. Most of the time, sometimes people just speak off at a whim, and they think like you listen to somebody, you think to yourselves, oh, they never thought about what they were saying, and even they will come to the defense and say, oh, I didn't think what I was saying. Technically, subconsciously, you thought about it, and that's what came out in that as in that energy or that in those words. And when people, like you mentioned with the N word, we can bring it home here. Colored people being called whatnot, black people, the K word, blah, blah, all those things. The when we do say these things, we automatically build in a wall, automatically. So you're not getting to understand the other person. So yeah, I mean, it's probably in jest, it's a joke. The whole alphabet people thing, but I can understand, I can see it. It's literally in the same vein as any other derogatory term that would be out there. So I can see it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
A question, seeing that we now have touched on LGBT. I wanted to actually ask you what the plus was about. Now you've actually mentioned it. Do you foresee, any one of you, do you foresee that those can we call it the acronym for now, or is it an abbreviation? Do you think that abbreviation will fall away in the future, where it will just like lesbians will be seen as lesbians, gays will be seen as gays, bisexual as bisexual, and they no longer fall under that blanket term?
I think
Or is that something that the community is striving towards?
I think it's going. I mean, in an ideal utopian world, we'd like that. However, it's going to take a long time before we're at that stage, and the main reason being is because we all view the world in a very gendered lens.
Yeah.
So from the time when your wife or your girlfriend is pregnant, you ask, is it a girl? Is it a boy? So there's still those questions, and there's still the gender reveal parties, which are now getting very extravagant, and they're making lasagna. Like, who wants to eat blue lasagna? Ew.
I would eat lasagna. I love lasagna.
Blue. Okay.
But I get what you're saying. It's like
so we
from the
constantly have
inception.
we have this gendered lens, and even when you meet someone and they say, hi, my name is I don't know, it could be Kim.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kim, you get male Kims and you get
the
female
female
Kims. Your first thing is to work out, is this a male Kim or a female Kim? So already we look at the world in a gendered lens. And that in itself, even when we are brought up at home, your little boy, you'll buy them blues and guns and not buy them a doll. So we already socialize and bring up our children in a gendered way. There are certain roles that we keep that are always re-emphasized, whether it's at church, whether it's at home, at braais, the little boys will run with the meat, the girls will have to do the salads and get the plates, they'll help with cleaning up. Those little roles in itself are still sort of, they replaying the whole gender
we default to society's norms.
Exactly. So and as people grow, and when they're in a relationship and the person feels, okay, I've been brought up and I'm the man, I should be the head of this household, and I don't have a job and my girlfriend's providing, I'm not a man in this relationship, then they become violent, and then we have gender-based violence because now this person's trying to take back that power. So for as long as we're constantly looking at the world in a gendered lens, there will be persons who are saying, actually, I don't fit into this binary. I do not present within this binary. I do not identify with this binary. And an ideal world would be one that is binaryless, because I don't think anybody enjoys being placed in a box. I mean, I'm short, and I don't like people telling me that I'm short. I always say I'm compact size,
Vertically challenged.
And so we don't like being boxed as individuals, but also now that your sexuality, or whether your gender expression and identity is already seen different from what has been viewed as normal or heteronormative, already now you are an otherness. You separated from what is deemed as normal. And every time you introduce yourself, you have to reaffirm that I am the other in this space. So I think for me, it's still a long way to go. Currently, I know even regionally, there's a lot of work around language and trying to go back to what are our identities in our indigenous languages. So what is gay in Xhosa? What is gay in Shona? What is lesbianism in Swahili? What is being transgender in India? How do people fit in within that society? If they're acknowledged within Hinduism, how is Christianity leaving people out? So there's all that conversation where it's coming back to language and identity. So we still have a very long way to go.
That's actually interesting, because when male or female, at obviously after birth, you assimilate now to, like you just said, now assimilate to all of those things, society's norms. You just by default, you get your home language, you get your communal or your community identity, or your social identity, and all those things. I never actually thought of it that way. For a gay, bi, lesbian, whichever you subscribe to, that, you're just looking at your languages, and how that then also needs to be integrated into now, quote unquote, your lifestyle. I want to say new lifestyle, but it's not your new lifestyle, because from a young age, a lot of, like you just mentioned as well, you knew from a young age, a lot of kids know quite early that, like, I'm not like him, or I'm not like her. And because of that, we fail to realize how important, especially language, like I've always maintained, I've been hard on that one, is that, like, your language dictates your perception of life.
This actually reminds me of a conversation that we had last week Friday at the party.
Can I just
No,
just 2 seconds? Is because if you, let's say, I'm trying to now process myself, I'm trying to think now, like, if you are a gay man, male, and you are speaking or you're using the language of a straight heterosexual, yeah, heterosexual. You still kind of maybe to a certain extent trying to look through that lens when in actual fact when you am I getting am I getting that right?
The thing, yeah, the thing is this, society allows us to, there's an influence. And
Yeah.
obviously there's a thinking and a behavior around that.
Yeah.
And we also, patriarchy plays a very big part in our way of thinking and our behavior.
Yeah.
So patriarchy comes in all institutions, especially our religious institutions, especially in our mosques, in our churches. And as a gay person, a gay man, obviously I'm also coming in with my own privileges, right? As a gay male man, as to a woman. So because I have a penis, I have power and I
Yeah.
come in with privilege. So patriarchy plays a big role and part or in our society. Even if you're not even if you don't have these identities, coming in as a straight heterosexual man or a straight woman, patriarchy also plays its part. And that covers the whole spectrum of how we view society and how we think and how we behave.
Like I was just this is a bit way off because yeah, but I'm a bit weird sometimes. But we
Don't
had this
say.
conversation.
You don't
That's
say.
the disclaimer.
Like we had this conversation where you've got no control over your nationality when you're born. You have no control of the language you speak, really, the sex, whatever. And like the conversation we had was, if we can just, sometimes I feel that stuff just it weighs you down, man. You know, it's a part of you. Don't get me wrong, but in the true sense, in true form, you are actually just the spirit, man, and the soul. You know what I'm saying? And that sometimes that weighs us down, and all the conflict comes from with that package that you were given, or not really. Sometimes it's given, like obviously your sexuality isn't given to you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I just thought about the conversation.
I
that
think-
we-
I think
that
what's-
we-
But
that
that
we
is
had.
the boxes that
Yeah.
you were talking about, is those boxes societies try to put us in, and you need to behave and act
A
in
certain,
a certain way.
certain way.
But I also think it's like it's the it weighs those down that quote unquote wake up to it. There's a lot of people that are just fine with with that box.
The
They're
Yeah.
happy with the
status.
box,
Yeah,
and that's the masses. That's
Yeah,
most
even,
of
even having that, I had to give the disclaimer because
Yeah.
even having that conversation feels a bit weird because
Yeah.
that's not a normal conversation to
Exactly.
have. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, what I wanted to say was I'm not sure because we've now just hit the
Ground
we
running.
we hit the ground running. So I don't know if did we actually touch on the organization? I don't think we have it. No. Can you any one of you can you maybe just give us like an overview of like I am.
Sure. So I am catalyzes faith communities to be inclusive and affirming. So you can read more on that on our website, www.im.org.za. So basically what we do is we work, as I said, with predominantly Christian faith, working with denominations. So denominational work, I mean the Methodist Church, Presbyterian Church, United Reform, NG Kerk, Congregational Church. In terms of creating inclusive and affirming spaces, by that I mean we work with regards to policy, we work with creating safe spaces for LGBTIQ clergy, we work with lay leaders and community in terms of saying, how can our church be more inclusive? How does an inclusive church look like? But we also work a lot with contextual Bible study. And the sacred text that we work with is the Bible. So we look at the Bible and we say, okay, actually, let's reread this Bible. You find a lot of the conversations when it comes to people who are sexually or gender diverse. A normal argument that is used is, oh, but God created Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve. or they'll say, yeah, but Leviticus says you may not lie with another man, or they'll quote the
Yeah.
7 texts that are in the Bible. So what we say, we believe, let's go back, let's reread this Bible through a process called reading together. And what it does is it's a methodology where you look at the Bible, but you look at it in a contextual way.
Okay.
So our thing is the sacred texts were written within a certain period, and obviously with every period there's a certain culture to it.
Yeah.
There's a certain history to it, and it would be wrong to pick and choose which scripture works for you. So commonly you find with Leviticus, people say, oh yeah, but Leviticus says this. Yeah, but then Leviticus also says don't eat prawns. Look at yourself. It says don't mix fabrics.
Fabrics, yeah.
Look at yourself,
Yeah.
So-
You can't that pick.
Yeah, so we go through that process of rereading the Bible together, and we allow the participants to journey and really look at what is this text really about. So the common one is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So we look at chapter 19, we read the full text. Then we say, okay, now let's take it back. Let's start at chapter 18, where the 2 angels, that's where they first started their journey. And as we go through the process of reading from 18 to 19 and asking people questions, so was the story really about gay sex? And people then say, but if you read it, it's actually a group of men from the village said, take these strangers out, we want to know them, or we want to have sex with them. And that's not really a gay relationship, if people from a certain village are going and saying, take out your guests because we want to show them that they don't have power in this space, it's what we call xenophobia, right? And when has gang rape been about a relationship?
Yeah.
And then it's having that discussion of what is this text on about? So we use contextual Bible studies. We utilize dialogue as a method of engagement. We refuse to enter debates because debates, already people have got their sides and it just becomes a pissing contest. Us, we believe that, let's have an honest engagement. And an honest engagement is one that does require a safe space, but there's an element of risk to it. So you must be willing to say, okay, actually, yes, this is what I believe, but I want to listen to you. Let me process this. What does this mean to me? And while you're on that journey, people get to unlearn certain things and they get to relearn certain things. Others, it's not a thing of it happens within one workshop and you come out changed. It's a process. With others, you're just planting the seeds of saying, no, actually, maybe I do need to go back and do more research and more theological reflection on this. And then also we work with communities. That's where I come in, working with civil society, sort of things saying, we do not exist just as a silo, but we work in partnership with other organizations because we acknowledge that being LGBTIQA, that's not the only thing. You have other needs as a person. You need land, you need a job, so there's socioeconomic factors that come into your being. And in order to be able to access all those services and those rights, we cannot just isolate ourselves to say, oh, we'll only work with the Christians, But that person comes to church on Sunday, goes back home, and might be going back home to an abusive space, or might be going back to a space where there's poverty. And that is why it's important for us to partner with other organizations and work collaboratively. We also work regionally, and this is mainly offering support to other regional activists in terms of sharing resources, methodology, and also offering support. So that's, I would say, I am in a nutshell.
I was going to ask now, and what if there are people of the community, of the LGBT community, I plus community, that don't subscribe to a religion, so to say?
So
How would they then be facilitated?
So, as I said, we work mainly within the faith sector, but we don't isolate ourselves
Okay.
into that. And that's also recognizing that as a being, in order to be in a holistic being, there's element of it's not just your physical, but there's spirituality that comes into it.
The reason why I'm asking is because I've just read now on the website as well.
Yeah.
And it's I won't say it's common knowledge, but I would suspect that this would probably happen in maybe not only Christian churches, maybe also on the Islamic side of things as well, and other faiths and denominations as well, is that because the sacred text supposedly says that, like, you know what, we shun this, would those people then feel like they are being discriminated against at church, the mosque, and so forth, feel isolated and maybe not want to come? You see, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there are people obviously now that subscribe to those terms. They're gay, they're lesbian, whatever, and they no longer go to places of worship because
Definitely.
of what
Definitely.
they've yeah
Yeah.
what they've gone
Before
through.
Zain responds, perspective, can I just correct you?
Sure.
Please don't use subscribe. It's not like I fill out my
Sorry.
monthly
It's my terminology. I should,
subscription.
okay, so
You'd
not
rather say identify.
identify.
as.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Julie. Yeah.
Zain, do you want
Okay, so I like to refer myself when coming to when talking about these things. You know, the day that I came out to my mother, it was on a Friday. It's a holiday in
Yes.
so it was Jum'ah, and the Imam was talking about homosexuality, and I mean, I was sitting in a saf in the prayer line, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I went to my mother and I opened up and I told her, and unfortunately she wasn't equipped enough and educated enough to hold me, and I was rejected. And there's a lot of people that do feel like that, sitting in a church, sitting in a mosque, and hearing about how you're going to go to hell.
And most of the times those are the ones that haven't come out also.
Yeah, they sit there and how and that is the hate speech and the hate speech that happens where people don't feel comfortable to go into those spaces anymore. That go that don't go to church, that don't go to mosque because they don't feel safe
Yep.
in that space. So spirituality is a very important aspect of a human being.
Yeah.
So how do you go back to that? So what you do, what I am do is that they unpack these things and they reread the scripts, right? So also with our Fitra Foundation, an organization that I used to work for, they do the same thing. We look at the Quran and we look at the verses. Now, being a person coming and living in the Western Cape, Arabic is not our first language.
Yeah.
So now, how do you understand a important book
Yeah.
and you need to recite it and you need to interpret it and understand it? How do you then how do you internalize this that has been that has been taught to you?
Exactly.
So people are shunned away from in spiritual spaces because they cannot be their authentic selves and be in their naturalness
Yes.
while praying to their God.
Yeah.
You know, so that is already a problem. That's problematic.
Do you guys also, like she explained, revisiting the scriptures? Do you also like do it in
Yeah.
or do you do it for the Muslims? For the Muslims as well, in the Quran as well? Do you-
So with us, when it comes to interfaith, what we normally do is then we would invite people from the different respective
Yeah.
faiths rather to lead that process.
Yeah.
So Il Fitra will speak to the Quran. We'll call Temple Israel, which is more of a progressive Jewish community. From their synagogue, they would send someone who would speak more to the Abrahamic faith as well and Judaism. So we would create the space and then we would invite those who are within that space because we're not champions or pioneers of every single sector. We can speak to Christianity because our staff has a domini. We have theologians who do research. We're working we work with seminaries, the communities, clergy. So we've got that sort of support within the Christianity. However, when it comes to Islam or Judaism, that's where we reach out to those who are subject expertise.
Sure.
Just another thing, like in the video also we touched, there was just a little thing where the safety of the LGBTI group.
Plus.
So plus, sorry. Can you maybe go into that? How I know you had an incident. Ik weet ik heb mijn vader.
It was therapeutic to laugh about the situation.
Yeah, but
But
obviously
anyway.
I had to do that just to make you forget about the seriousness. But it wasn't serious. I took it really serious.
Sy
But
lyf gat maak.
The coping mechanism.
it's a couple-
No,
Thank you.
these.
So yeah, just go into that and just let's just dive into that because I think a lot of people don't realize the safety that's involved because we just see maybe a gay guy and people will make fun of it, but we don't really, like us in the video said, we don't live it. So I just want to testify maybe on that on that side of things.
Before I go there, when I started the safe space, so I started the safe space in Lavendale, and everything was set up. We contacted people that's gonna come, and I was standing in front of the window, and I was waiting to see when my people are arriving. So there was like boys sitting on a electric box, and one of the members came around the corner, and these boys decided to throw them with stones.
Sure.
And I mean, you don't even throw your dog
Yeah.
with stones. And this is happening within our communities. And that day, I just decided this is the reason why I would like to start safe spaces. Because, I mean, and it also stems from parents teaching their children, calling them morphe. So if you see there's a morphe going, then immediately it becomes funny. It becomes a circus. It becomes dangerous even for the gay person walking there. The story that you talked about was a couple of weeks ago. I took a taxi. I wanted to take a taxi to Capricorn. And then 5 guys in a Mercedes Benz pulled up and they didn't want me to get into the taxi. And then they told me they're going to rape me. They're going to finger fuck me. They're going to do all these horrible things to me.
Sure.
Obviously, looking at how I look like, they made the perception on that. So automatically, that put me way back, back into the where I was like 20. I don't want to give my age away.
50.
Yeah, something like that. But it put me back into that position, you know, where these
Vulnerability.
people come and they just take away who I am and who I was building myself up to be. And I'm still traumatized around that. So the reason why we're building safe spaces is because people are there for healing, right? They are there for psychosocial support.
Yeah.
It's not a cook and tea party.
Yeah.
Where people come and they celebrate and talk about who they had sex with the other night.
Yeah.
It's
Planning for
about
pride.
this safe space is about building up your self-development, your self-esteem, your self-worth. That has been either being taken away from you or you're trying to regain it. So these safe spaces are spaces where you find your voice, you know, and you build yourself up. So safe spaces to me is extremely important. And how you maintain that safe space is another job on its own. Because with a safe space can also become unsafe.
Yeah.
You know, in how we talk to each other and how we approach each other, in the things that we do and say and that type of thing. So that's why safe spaces are extremely important to build up, and that healing process that needs to take place. So I'm fortunate enough to have met and been in different types of spaces. And where Irfan was talking about building or having colored safe spaces, if you look at NGOs, they are trying to build and holding those safe spaces. There isn't any recreational centers for our children out there.
Yeah.
There isn't no spaces where kids can roam freely in their own community.
Yeah.
right? So NGOs try to build up safe spaces. That's why we also have our child protection policies and those things in place, so that our facilitators don't be perpetrators in doing those things. So there are little spaces
Okay.
in our communities what he was talking about, you know, and we need to keep those people accountable. If you send your child to an aftercare, that should be a safe space,
Yeah.
right? And you as a parent needs to make sure that your child is comfortable enough,
Yeah.
you know.
I think if I can just build on what Zain said, your safe spaces are basically like your family. So some of us are fortunate to have both our parents or grow up in a home where they are both parents. And whether you come back from school and you're like, Mommy, look, I drew this, or Mommy, I did this, or sitting down with Dad and saying, Dad, so and so didn't want to play with me today. You know, they become your safe space where they help you to grow as a child, you know. And when you get to a point where now you're coming out to whether it's your parents, your sister, and their reaction is to reject you. Now these are people that you've been with X amount of years, whether you come out at 18, whether you come out at 22, whether you stay to fulfill your parents' dreams, because all our parents have expectations of us. You get married, but you actually have no feelings of attraction towards your wife or your husband, but you do it because that is what is expected of you. And the last thing you want to do is to give your father a heart attack. And your mother will highlight that, your father will die if he hears that.
Yeah.
So now you're constantly thinking, I can't do this because my father's going to die. So when your family rejects you, you're left there just having no support. Who do you turn to? So these safe spaces that are created are spaces where people are able to be given support. And it's a process of trying to get the person to be able to discover their own voice and to be able to talk and be resilient. One thing I always say, trans women, specifically trans women, are one of the strongest people I know on this earth. Because to be able to say, this is my identity, this is how I live, to lose your family, your friends, to constantly, even if you're walking to a cafe, there will be kids, there will be people making fun about you, about, oh, he's got a beard, but he's wearing a skirt. Oh, what's happening? What is he? Is it a she-male? And, having all those terms being thrown at you, not being able to get a job because your ID says you're male, but actually you're female presenting. So you can never get a job until such time you're able to change your gender marker. To wake up every morning to go and shower, and the body parts, your biological parts, constantly remind you that, hey, actually you're not a woman because you still have a penis between your legs. To look at your body, and I mean, I'm female, and I have my own body politics where, it's summer body, so I go to gym and I try to lose weight so I can look good in a swimming costume. And then it's winter, then I need to be a little bit plumper because, there's the whole perspective of we like our African women round. So I really don't want to be a single sod in winter. And so I try to gain weight and then I have to work it off for summer. Now, if that's just the body politics of being female, how much more if your biological components are not aligned to your own expression? Every day is a living nightmare. Now, as I said, these safe spaces are there to assist people to get the strength because the thing also about being either gay or lesbian or bisexual, you don't just come out once. It's not like you go to a bar and you're like, listen, I'm gay.
Yeah.
When you're walking in public and you're holding your partner's hand, you're coming out. I'm a person who I do PDA, and that's because I believe anyone can love anyone and you can show love whichever way. So the minute I kiss my partner or my girlfriend at the taxi rank, it becomes a discussion. Ooh, look at those girls are kissing, and oh, wouldn't you want to join in? Or what do you think? And then people are like, yeah, but it's fine if it's girls, if it were men. No, that is disgusting. And then it becomes, I'm telling you, the whole ride But it's from Belleville all the way to Mitchell's Plain. That's the whole topic. And you're just
I was just going to say now, I was actually going to bring it up earlier, but
Yeah.
you just mentioned it now, is that there's this perception out there that it must be easier for lesbians than gay guys because, it's like this whole fantasy to see two women. Like that's the
Fantasy.
perception. That's the perception of
patriarchy. Yeah?
of patriarchy. Yes, exactly. But that same patriarchy doesn't want to see two guys, so it becomes a bit uncomfortable. So, but in actual fact, so the perception is like it's easier for lesbians, not actually.
Not actually.
It's not, because also it puts us at risk. I mean, in KZN, after Kingswell Tini made the statement of saying that being gay is un-African, there was a huge rise of corrective rape, where men felt that, you know what, you think you're a man, we'll show you that you're a woman. And butch presenting women, especially masculine presenting women, were being raped, were being killed. We had horrendous crimes. I mean, Yudi Simelane, who was in 2010, was going to play for Banyana, who was a great soccer player, was killed by a group of men who just wanted to prove that, at the end of the day, you're a woman just because of that you have a vagina. So corrective rape constantly comes up. And things like if I go to a club with my partner and we're dancing and some man will come and ask me out, even though they see that I'm sitting with my partner and they can, you can see how people relate in terms of body language, but they will still insist on asking me out. Or they'll make a comment like, oh, we don't want her, let's ask this one out. And they'll make such uncomfortable conversation. But had it been a heteronormative couple, they're not going to ask the girl out seeing that they with their boyfriends. It's those little things that also put people, like, you don't feel safe. When you're in a taxi, and I mean, I'm a woman. If I'm in a taxi and there's only 4 men and a driver, I'm already checking, how do I open this door? Can I kick this window out in case things go pear-shaped? And it's a terrible space to
I'm
live
actually
in.
reminded of myself and Zain. We had a friend called Ricardo Cummings, Bumpy, and we were back in the day, 90s, I think. It was still the 90s, yeah. And we were at the party. I don't know if you remember. And we stepped over, and then there was a fight between Bumpy and this guy.
Yeah.
And then I jumped in. We were all liquor drunk, and I told this guy, because he actually he put his hands on Bumpy, and then I went to him. It's like, "Ek is coming over my slut, man," like that type of thing. Luckily, the guy didn't, because he could have moved me because it's quite a big bra. I was drunk, at the time, I was like, "Fuck, well, I need to make a statement here. This is my bra now, whatever." So I grew up with that type of thing, but luckily it wasn't like you were saying, like the killing of the nurse. But I can't even imagine, like, even with my friends being gay, I can't really fathom how difficult it must be. You know what I'm saying?
It's this whole ideal where we expect men to be strong and dominant. And the minute someone is gay, we think, oh, that means they're going to be feminine. That means they're going to be weak. That means they want to be women. So once again, this whole gendered lens. And that's why you find that a person, men will say, oh, I don't mind having a gay friend. Oh, it's cool, and then as long as he doesn't make a move on me, there's this automatic thinking that, oh, just because you have a gay bra, one day he's going to ask you out, which is not true. And this thing of, oh, the minute someone comes out as gay, you're not fully a man, because you must be wanting to be a woman or pretending to be a woman, or you have an extra element of femininity that other men don't have. And then people sort of treat you like a second-class citizen, or treat you how they would treat women, which is like second-class citizen. And once again, it's that whole gender-based violence and the whole gendered lens. It just comes full story.
I would also, like, my friends, say if my friends come in the meet, Vampy or whatever, and they would say, oh, I hope he doesn't come on to me. And I'm like, Why in the first place do you think you're hot enough to?
Thank you.
just
Thank you.
assuming
Please
that-
say that loud.
Okay, we know he's gay, but we also know that you're not that good looking. You know.
Yeah. There's a tweet I read where it said men don't understand consent until a gay man makes a move on them. And then it makes you think the whole thing of how men will continuously ask somebody else, even though she's saying no, no, no,
Yeah.
they'll keep pursuing because for them that no is, she's playing hard to get, she needs time. But if a gay man says, listen, bruh, let's date,
Yeah.
then it's no, keep away from me, stay away, and I'm
Yeah.
here, I'm not gay. Makes you think, when it
Yeah.
comes to consent and how we normalize
Yeah.
the whole not hearing woman saying no.
And that actually brings me now to the point I wanted to make earlier on is like, where do we start as a society to change the way we think? Because firstly, we are in a patriarchal society, so 9 out of 10 times we're thinking along that lines. Where do we start? I mean, now I think the education department is going to bring in like sexual orientation and stuff like that.
Comprehensive sex education.
Yeah, there we go. Not sexual orientation. Incorrect use of words there. But yeah, what you mentioned, comprehensive sex
It's comprehensive sex education.
sex education. Yes. And I've got my opinions and my views where that's concerned.
Please share.
Like a lot of people.
No. Look, my thing is okay. Let me first make the point that I wanted to make. But I think instead of having that, because we do have the gender-based violence has escalated now over the last couple of months, and even though it's not in the news now, it doesn't mean that it has subsided. We know that the news only touches on certain things when they want to touch on certain things. So with that coming to the fore now, why not have at schools have education along the lines of, you know what, there isn't just male and female sexual orientation. There are sexual orientation along the lines of these other identities as well. So that from a young age the kids get to understand, like, you know what, even if I look like this, it doesn't mean that internally I feel like that. Where now with the sexual education, it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, my thing is that comes down to the parents need to give that information. Like, do I trust my child getting that? Now, again, parents, there are some parents also that they have also warped views and stuff like that. But if that's the case, because we do have communities where it's very traditional, I mean traditional, for the viewers out there, I'm not referring only to black African people, because that's the, when people say traditional, and they think it's that, like, there's traditions that you have, there's traditions that I have, there's traditions in our community as well. So from a traditional standpoint, a lot of times, there are certain taboos, and then parents don't want to touch on those things, or there's certain things that happen behind closed doors, yada yada yada. If that's the case, if I could suggest something to the education department, why not on any given evening or any given weekend have sexual education for the parents on how to speak to your kids about those things? Because at the end of the day, it starts at home. It doesn't start in the class, it starts at home. That's where the education is. Like, I don't feel my kids need to know what 69 position is. It wasn't in grade 7 or whatever. Like, 10 to 1, they're on the internet and they know it already.
Can I jump in their perspective? I mean, a lot of us have views about this comprehensive sex education, but I would like to share a case. When I was still working with youth in conflict of the law, I sat in at Newlands Court, which is in KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, and this, I think she was 7 years old. 7-year-old had been raped by her uncle, and it started off when she was a lot younger. But when she was retelling it, so you know how we have these words, playful words that we use to refer to vagina or penis.
Yes.
So the little girl in this particular house, the child's vagina is called a flower. So mommy would be like, "Have you washed your flower? Make sure you bath everywhere." So it was called a flower. And when the uncle started assaulting and molesting the child went to the neighbor and said, "Uncle keeps touching my flower." And the neighbor didn't know that, that's the word they use.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Yeah, but flowers are to be touched and they to be picked because flowers are so beautiful. Next time your uncle touches the flowers, you must help him." So then this child then thought, okay, that is what is supposed to happen. And then it started off being her being assaulted and molested, and then eventually he raped her. And due to the damage, then the parents started saying, "No, actually, we think something's wrong." Took her to the doctor, and then it came out that she'd been raped. And according to the law, if the child has reported to an adult before that this has happened, and that particular person does not file a complaint or report it to the police, then you are seen as culpable as well,
Yes.
So when they asked the little girl, "But did you tell anyone that, this is your uncle was touching your flower?" She said, "Yes, I told neighbor so-and-so." So then, and this neighbor then got arrested. And at that time, it was before the definition of rape was amended. So it was specifically at that time where the child has to say, "I was penetrated by a penis, he put it in my vagina."
Yeah.
And because she kept saying, "No, he first started touching my flower and then he put this in my flower," then the advocate there kept saying, "But that's not the proper term. And according to the law, the definition says it's a vagina. And if she doesn't know the word vagina, then it didn't happen."
Wow.
So, and that is just one case. And I mean, and now with the amendment of the definition of rape, where it includes sexual assault and a whole lot of other things, when the children are in camera and they are given toys and they say, "Okay, using these toys, demonstrate what so-and-so did to you," then the child is able to retell the story. So my thing is, with the comprehensive sex education, it's not about teaching your children about sex and saying, "Go out there and have sex." It's mainly about getting the children to have language to identify when something wrong is happening at home. So if they're saying, "These are your private parts," and they teach in grade 4s, "These are your private parts," and they're private because no one is supposed to touch you there, it's only for yourself, then the child knows that if my cousin comes and he keeps touching me there, I can say, "Mommy, so-and-so keeps touching me here and I'm not comfortable."
Yeah.
And if you look at how they've broken down the stages, I mean, it's only in grade 6 that they introduce language around lesbian, gay. And that's more a thing of because when you reach at adolescence, that's where you start kissing girls, kissing boys, trying to find out, do I like Becky or do I like John?
Yeah.
And when you're saying, "Okay, actually, I'm a girl and I don't like John and I actually like Becky. What is it called? Is there something wrong with me?" So it's being able to give children language that it's not only heteronormative people in our community. There are people who are gay. There are people who are lesbian.
Yeah.
It's giving them the language to say, there are people who are different, but it doesn't make them any different from you.
Yeah.
It's just that they are more attracted to people of the same sex. They're not saying, "We are teaching you the gay agenda," right? And then when you get to your standard 5s, where they're being taught about masturbation, it's not saying go out there and do it. I mean, kids, and I mean, Sigmund Freud got a lot of flack for this, where he said, babies are sexual beings. Children are sexual beings. It's just like if you have your little one comes and sits on your lap and they rock. And Freud said you need to notice if the child keeps doing that, then it's a thing of this child has picked up that when I rock on someone's thigh this way, I get a certain feeling. And that person is rocking. And when they get that excitement, it's a sense of it's sort of sexual excitement for the child. And we need to pick up on those cues. And that's why things, even with this, it's going to allow people to have a conversation with children where if Uncle so-and-so is around and you say, oh, don't you want to go sit on Uncle so-and-so's lap? And the child says, no, I don't want to. That parents are able to say, okay, let's leave the child. Don't force children to sit on so-and-so's lap or to kiss Uncle so-and-so or this and that. Because if the child is not comfortable, they will then have the language to be able to say that. That is what I've read around it.
Okay.
And that's what I also believe. The thing around education for adults, it's a great idea, but how many parents actually go to parents' meetings?
Yeah.
My daughter is
I
12.
was going to say make it mandatory.
And,
but yeah.
and she recently texted me on WhatsApp and she's like, Mom, how old were you when you started dating? And I was like, sure? Are we there yet? What? And then I'm now trying to be as honest as possible, but not in a encouraging you kind of honest way. And we're having this conversation, and then she's like, she has a boyfriend. And it took me 3 days of me melting and crying to my partner and buying wine, saying, she's dating! Oh my God, she's dating!
How old is she?
She's 12. My partner's like, but now you need to talk to her about the birds and the bees and the boys and pregnancy. And I'm like, no, she's still my little baby. So, and I mean, I grew up, my mother never gave me a sex talk. She sat me down and said, so at school, have you started talking about bodies? And I was in standard 5 at that time. And I was like, yes. And I was so excited because at school, there was this whole thing of you come to school the next day, and you're like, I got the sex talk. I got the birds and the bees talk. So I was excited. Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to just be like, yeah, guys, I got the talk. My mom sits me down. She's like, have you started learning about bodies and changes? And I said, yes. She said, listen here. You better listen properly because I am not going to teach you anything new. I pay a lot of money for that school, so you better listen. And I'm just like, oh, that's the whole sex talk. So some of our parents come from a culture where it's not easy to talk about sex, while others come from a culture where they'll sit you down, they'll tell you about changes, they'll tell you about masturbation, and it won't be a guilt trip like if you masturbate so many times you're going to go to hell and sort of things.
Might go blind.
So I think the curriculum is more around demystifying that and giving people language and giving children the ability to be able to communicate and also to be able to draw lines for themselves on what's healthy and what's not healthy for themselves.
Of course.
Thanks for that breakdown, because a lot of what has been shared on social media or surrounding this is like everybody's sharing that one picture where they show this one position, and that's not going to be in the textbook. And I'm like, okay, now I'm with work and whatever, but like, yeah, that's a very thorough breakdown of, and that makes sense.
I just want to touch on the reporting aspect, especially when you have to go and report a case, right? So going back to the scenario where I had to, I built up my courage after the whole trauma experience, and I went to the police station and I wanted to make a assault case, and then I was victimized once more because I had to go through that story. And then the officer at the there then said I have to go to the doctor, that I cannot make the case because I need to go for a checkup at the doctor. They're not willing to make a case or open up a case like that. So you've been re-victimized when
Why were you supposed to go for?
because they want to see the assault, the your body where they assaulted you.
Yeah.
So now you need to go to the doctors at the clinic. But I actually went to a doctor. But when I got there, I waited an hour for the doctor. And then when the doctor arrives, the doctor says, "I don't fill in these type of forms."
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So now the system is actually failing us. And this was just think about all the other victims that have to go, even if it was a sexual assault, if it was a gender-based violence, how sensitized or how desensitized or how educated are the police at your stations. Even if as a gay person coming to the police station and making a case, how they are treated. Because now they say, no, but did you entice the person to do what you... So you've been re-victimized.
Yeah, secondary
or
victimization.
at the police station. So I think at one stage you also do workshops with officers or police.
Triangle Project currently does that within the Western Cape, where they do sensitization of police officers, people from the justice system. And like Zain said, you find that somebody comes through and the police say, we're not going to assist you until you have a J88 filled out. Your J88 is the form that they give you where you go to the doctor and then he'll mark where you've got bruisings, where you've been hurt, da 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 da. According to law, you should be able to open the case without being forced to have the J88 filled out.
Okay.
However, nowadays certain police officers don't follow the book. I had an experience where my laptop got stolen and I went to SAPS. And the guy there was busy telling me how pretty I am, and he's going on, and so where do you work? Do you stay? He took an hour for me to write my complaint because he was busy talking and he was writing the incorrect things. I was so upset. Then I was like, you do realize your job is to just write my report. You know, this, I want to open a case and you're busy telling me about how I have a lovely smile. I was so pissed off. But to him, he was just saw this beautiful girl.
He told you you got a nice smile in the beginning.
I feel bad now.
No.
Stop dashing.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, here is a police station that I came for a service. But that service was hampered because now this person couldn't see me coming through as a victim, but saw a sexual being. So you find this constant secondary victimization. For example, if my girlfriend beats me up and I go to the police station to lay a common assault or an assault GBH case, the first thing they say is, oh, but why did you let another girl hit you? Why didn't you fight back?
Yeah.
Or why did you let another man hit you? You know, you're both men, you know? And then there's that where they ridicule you, you know? So people don't get a proper service. And although they say you must complain to the station commander and, you know, and say, you know, Officer so-and-so gave me poor service and this is what he did, what are the chances that there's an intervention or a follow-up that's done?
But I think that also comes down to then as us as a society is very like we're closed, you know, to certain things. So it's like if it's like let's say two gay guys get into a brawl or a fight or they're partners and there's an
Domestic
assault,
violence,
and there's domestic violence, there's assault. Like you said, they're gonna say like, "But why didn't you fight back?" It's because that's how society sees it. It's like, you know, you're a male, you're supposed to defend yourself. As two females, you're supposed to defend yourself. They see domestic violence as male hitting female, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's closed. There's no open-endedness to it. It's just closed. That's it.
And you touch on two things, perspective. The one is one very thorny subject around beliefs and work, which came up with the civil union case recently, where before with the Civil Union Act of 96, commissioners and clerks were given the opportunity to say, if you feel that it's against your conscience or against your religious belief, marrying people of the same sex, then you can say, no, actually, I can't do this. So they, from 96 and now, I mean, last year, the Home Affairs clerks were given the opportunity to excuse themselves. And that led to there being close to less than 50 in the country that are willing to officiate same-sex civil unions. And then the discussion became, okay, but then when does religion come in the way of doing your job? You got hired to work at Home Affairs, and you're supposed to. They're not asking you to exchange vows. All that's asked of you is to, okay, here's the form. Let's fill it out. Are you Mrs. So and so? Oh, you Miss So and so. You're marrying Miss So and so. Let's fill out the forms. You sign them. Okay. Thank you very much. And then you move on and you
But
capture it and
aren't
send
you
it.
infringing on their rights in the same breath?
Okay, so I will respond to you now. So I just want to finish with this. So then it became a thing of what are your duties? So what are you hired for? Where does conscience come to play, and how does it affect your work? So things like you get people who are hired as nurses. Does that nurse, if they are a Jehovah's Witness and they don't believe in contraception, do they then say, sorry, I will not give you contraception because it's against my religious belief? Is a doctor allowed to say, I will not operate on so-and-so because of my religious belief? So there are occupations where people have to separate their religious beliefs from their normal duties, because when they were hired, they knew that my job, amongst my job specifications, I am going to have to give out contraception to those who are coming within the community who are of the age, as according to the law. It's got nothing to do with my beliefs.
Exactly.
So then there was a whole movement around, if we're looking at the Constitution and we all have the equal right to getting married, to be happy, regardless of our age, gender, race, sex, sexual orientation, why are people now, their rights being infringed? You cannot get married because so-and-so believes that. And there was a whole discussion, and they had to review saying, does your religion play a role within your everyday activities at Home Affairs? Do you come in the morning and pray? Do you have lunch breaks where it's prayer sessions? Is there other aspect of your work that demands and calls onto your religious, where you have to perform a religious rite or act? If not, then why this particular instance? We can use religion as a saying, no, I won't be able to do it, but you can do everything else. So then that led to an amendment of the Civil Unions Act, and the Home Affairs clerk have been given 24 months. So they're given 2 years to sort of process whatever religious shit you got in your cupboard. And you realize either I'm here to do my job and my work is to do this, or to say, actually, no, I can't do this. So let me remove myself from here. Because another question was, okay, so you've got people who are saying they can't perform this service. Who can? We can't have a branch with 70 staff members and nobody can do it. At the end of the day, you're here to provide a service. And if you're not providing the service, you're not servicing the community. You're not meeting your mandate. Now you talk about, but is it not infringing their right? Once again, when you got your job specification, did religion come into it? So the question was, when you were hired, did Home Affairs say, okay, what faith are you? Is it going to affect your filing and data capturing? When they found out that in a branch of 70 staff, 56 say they can't work, are there other staff members who can perform the function? So can that branch still effectively function without hampering its mandate? If everybody says, no, we're not doing it, then it's not functioning. It's not providing a service to the community. Then they have failed. So now what do? Do we fire everybody and rehire flexible staff? Do we move people around? What do we do? Because at the end of the day, there's a community, it requires a service, and this is where the service delivery is supposed to come from.
You know, a couple of years ago, I actually had a conversation with him and Zain, but I was with him and Vampi, and I was like on a trip where I was really trying to be religious, or on my way to religion or whatever. And I was like, I'm telling him that, look, guys, I said you guys, my friends, but you guys know that in the Bible it's wrong, whatever. And I just realized how wrong I was, man. And since then, I've become more spiritual person, and I don't want anybody to see this as, let me just put it to, just be honest and say, I think sometimes religious just gets in the way, man. You know what I'm saying? It just gets in the way again. Like what I was saying earlier on, it weighs us down, and it creates a barrier between your soul and another soul. You know what I'm saying? But that's where I've grown in that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I come from them being in my life. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And for me to have said that, that's one of those things that where I regret. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but it's a learning curve, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
I think religion provides principles, ethics, in terms of how to grow and be a cool human being, basically, how to live with others. And I mean, Christianity says the greatest commandment is love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
But some people tend to
Skip that one.
not, they will love their South African neighbor a little bit more than their Zimbabwean neighbor, or, will like that neighbor instead of the gay neighbor. So, however, there's this thing also that constantly also gets used, this thing of culture, where they'll say, yeah, but culture says this, culture says that. And they use it as a barrier, and they make it seem as if it doesn't change over time. So the whole thing with the Bible, they say, yeah, but the Bible says this. But the person is interpreting it from a different space. They themselves don't even understand what did the Bible say. Because, I mean, originally the Bible was Hebrew texts. It was Greek texts that were translated.
Yes.
When you translate something, you come from a certain way of seeing life. So you will translate it in a way that makes sense in how you see life. When I first moved to Cape Town and I was following Vanikap on Instagram, I didn't get the whole is alles alright by Rehace? Because I was just like, why does he keep asking if everything is good at home? This doesn't make sense. But then as I interacted with Capetonians, I got to understand how this saying,
you realize that alles also not good.
It's like checking are you okay? Like, sort of all your eggs in one basket, or what's happening with you. So when I understood that, no, actually it's more of it's a cultural fun slogan, I then got to understand when Vanikap writes about, if so-and-so did this, is alles all right by Berry Hayes. Then I'm like, oh, okay, no, he doesn't really talk about being home. So there's that where you find there's certain people who become gatekeepers, and they want to dictate and police and say, but this is how it's always been done. It's like when people say, yeah, but church, you must go to church every Sunday if you're a Christian. And then you ask them, but what is church? Is church the building? Is church the institution? Because, I mean, it comes with hierarchy, and there's a way of doing things, a culture, a process, a tradition. Or is it the people?
Yeah.
Where you're coming together every Sunday and you're coming to church. I mean, I was watching South Park, and there was this episode where the whole community comes to church, but then at church, they literally rip off whatever the minister's saying, and he'll say, if he's reading about Abraham and his little boy, and then they'll make a joke about, but then the Catholic priest wanted to rape the little boy.
Yeah.
And eventually the minister's like, actually, I don't want to be a minister anymore because people come here to mock me.
Yeah.
And then the community's like, oh no, what are we going to do now? There's no church service. What are we going to do? And then the community goes into a depression because now they don't know. They've always had the standing date of every Sunday. We're going there to mock the minister. And then it becomes a whole thing about sort of rediscovery about what is the church about. It's about the community. It's about the people. And I think we need to be careful that we don't continue to preach interpretations that then end up policing and dictating people how to live their lives.
Yeah.
You can use your religion as a guide in terms of how to see life. That
But that's
we are souls, that are in bodies. And I mean, in other faiths believe that it's just it's over a certain cycle. You're going to die, leave this body, come back in a different body for a different experience. You know, where others believe if you die, you're either going to heaven or you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And others believe, oh, you're going to be an ancestor, so you never stop working.
Yeah.
You work in your living life and you work when you're a dead spirit.
Yeah.
You know, so the problem becomes when we start policing and we start keeping and holding on to that, that it then becomes harmful and it excludes.
That was the point I was trying to make earlier on about like how many, that feel discriminated and isolated, how much of them do come. But also, you know what, touching on what Nantel was saying about spirituality and stuff like that. Like I don't subscribe to any religion any longer. I'm basically on a spiritual journey. I was obviously born Christian. But yeah, not obviously because it's not obvious, but I was born Christian. But I no longer subscribe to religions and dogmas and doctrines and stuff like that. But when I went through the website earlier on today, I asked myself the question for open spaces and for the LGBTI plus community to get the necessary help, service, resources, whatever. If you look at all industries and sectors in society, religion will probably be the best point for that. And hence why it is because if you look at churches, especially, okay, not especially churches, mosques, any religious practices, it's always community based. So they're based in the community, they're working with the community, they're working with the poor. There's the soup kitchens and all those things. The outreach, all of those. It makes perfect sense for this concept, or not concept, for this drive to be from that vehicle. It's like I couldn't see it anywhere else, man. So I was like, okay, you know what? Even if I don't subscribe to a religion, I can see where this was a benefit, or where this actually fits in society and in the communities.
Do you guys want to say something? I think we just need to wrap it up.
Yeah, because we got a lot. We got a lot done.
I would just like to say something. Like I grew up with Cedric. Remember, Cedric used to stay by us.
The entertainer.
No.
It was a bit of an entertainer.
A wham lookalike.
Yeah, I grew up with him, and then for me, it was easier when Zain came out and when Van Beek came out. I remember Van Beek came out in the library, and he was like, "I need to tell you something." And I was joking, "Are you gay?" So, like that. So for me, it was like just another thing, man. But even with that background, I still learned a lot today. I just want to say thank you, and I've realized. Even with the background, you can't just think, nah, I'm cool. I'm cool with gays, but I don't know all the people. We need to open ourselves up more for other people's journey and stories and lifestyle and So I just want to say thank you guys because it was really an eye opener. Thanks.
Just one last thing as well is like I think like we live in a time where like I always say like the kids growing up nowadays, they don't have to go to the library to go research stuff in encyclopedias. You can pick up your phone, you got the internet. We basically grew up before the internet was there. Like I always say, like we're the last generation to know how it is to play outside. And then we're also the first generation of like the games and stuff like that. But we live in a time where I feel it is you've created a problem if you are closed-minded for yourself. Like you can literally, if you want to know anything, you can just find it on your phone now. And with that being said, we when being open-minded, you get to know more of other people, their backgrounds and all that things, and your old self, you can no longer be happy with your old mindset. It's like you become open to other possibilities and stuff like that. Something to me now quickly. They refer to Cape Town as the gay capital of South Africa. Um, maybe for both of you actually. Um, let's say coming out of the 90s. We now, what, 20 years have moved out of the 90s? Yeah, plus minus 20 to 30 years. Have you seen any changes where from a community? It's hard to ask for if there's been any positive changes because with the gender-based violence. But I'm gonna ask: has there been any changes? Has there been any progress where
Positive changes.
positive change where society's view of the LGBT community, and especially I mean Cape Town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that is another perception that Cape Town is the rainbow, the mother city of all queers and gays and
but
whatever.
that's not actually good.
But you know what? When people in Uganda, Kenya, our refugees come to our borders, they are being chased away because those people are even not desensitized of what is happening. And we have an organization called Pass Up in Cape Town that deals with foreign nationals that comes here
Or LGBTI.
and LGBTI and support them. So the picture that we're painting to the globe out there is false, right? Because when they get there, they're still being treated the same way that we as locals are being treated. I think there is some strides being made in the sector that we're in. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of tick boxes that we can say, okay, we have done that. And if we're going to stop not pushing the envelope, then our new
Recruits.
Yeah,
the new the young ones won't have the benefit of living a proper dignified human life, so that's why we have a Thule and of the Pass Ops and the Triangle
partners, yeah.
projects and all of that. Yeah.
I think just 2 points to in closing. Firstly, Cape Town, although people will see you whether you're trans presenting or you're lesbian and you're holding your partner's hand, people look at you and then they continue with their life. I'm originally from KwaZulu Natal, which is quite cultural and traditional. So certain spaces, you feel that you're different. And even within our activist spaces, people we work with and we've sensitized, you'll find a guy who'll say, "Yeah, but I'm only an activist until 4 p.m." And then they'll ask you out knowing that you're lesbian. And then you're like, but dude, we were fighting for our rights just now, and now you're just like, I know. It's up to us. So you see, there's still a lot of work to be done in communities where the discussion around sensitization, where people are sort of listening to LGBTI, and also spaces where there's intergenerational conversations, you find that there's more progress. And that's because it's having to root your identity in that it's not a Western concept. I didn't come to Cape Town and then I realized, oh, I'm gay.
yeah,
But meanwhile, where I grew up in the Eastern Cape, I wasn't gay. No. It's when you have that intergenerational discussion, then your grand's like, yeah, but we know so and so who dates women, and we know. It's just that we don't have a name for it. So the more we engage, the more people are learning, and it calls on patience on both sides.
yeah.
I mean, I know nowadays there are more people who are expressing being non-binary or gender non-conforming, and for us, it's a new language. It's having to understand that there are people who do not use the pronouns he or she, but would like to be referred as they or them, or Z, or So it's learning. We're constantly sort of learning. A second point that I wanted to come to was something that also Irfan raised, and I'm not bashing, I promise. The whole thing around, is there really a need to have separate spaces where people are growing separately instead of people being together? And this whole thing of if you're separating people, then you're normalizing being gay as like a separate development instead of people accepting you in the community and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think we spoke to that around that safe spaces are more about building the self-esteem to the individual and having that so the person know that there's a sense of belonging. They're able to own their voice and they're able to speak out and be resilient. And that the safe spaces do not work as like little gay hubs or little gay pickup spots.
Yes, yes.
And there's a bigger point to that. And you also spoke about how the whole men are trash and the exclusion of men in the movement, and that it's important to have men as part of that campaign.
That discussion.
Yes, it is important to have men, but also what is it about men that they cannot give women their own space? What is so hard by saying, okay, women want to have a space by themselves, let's give them that? Why do we have to be there and say, yeah, but we know we're trash, but we also want to be part of this? What is so hard about that? So the whole thing of, and I just wanted to say, it so happened that I had a Bell Hooks book with me, which is Feminism is for Everybody, where she's just writing some of the pillars of the whole feminism movement. And one of the chapters she speaks around that you need to have spaces that are conscious rising spaces. So spaces that are what we'd call safe spaces, where women, in terms of feminism, where they have spaces where they talk about where they're experiencing sexism and patriarchy and all this violence. So then they're able to identify it. And then also they're given a sense of agency. They're empowered to say, when you see this, this is how you can engage with it. Or this is how you can say, actually, no, this is not working. And you can call it out. And how you can work to make a change or transformation in that space. And then Bell Hooks says another third part is that there needs to be a curriculum that includes feminism, that teaches children about the dangers of sexism and patriarchy. Because once you have children that say, actually, I can wear pink or blue, it doesn't really matter, then you are taking out the gendered lens of saying, you're a boy, you can only play with Ben 10. You know, if this little boy actually loves Tinkerbell, fairies are magical. There's nothing wrong about being magical, and it's not gendered. You're actually a step closer to creating a society that promotes equality of all
inclusive,
an inclusive and affirming society, as opposed to a gendered, sexist, patriarchal society.
I think, like, I'm not going to defend Erifine, but I think also for me, where where that's concerned, I feel that it's not that we don't want, or I feel that men, it's not that men, the good men out there, you don't want to also put them in different boxes, good or bad, but the men out there, I don't think that we want to, so we're saying like, oh, women can't have their own spaces. If men at large are the culprit of gender-based violence, I feel that then we should be part of the discussion, as in tell us what we're doing wrong, that we can then process that as well. Because if we are not allowed in that discussion, how are we going to know what we are doing wrong? A lot of men are still very, not just a lot of men, like a lot of people in general are still very backwards. Like they're not thinking, they're not thinking all inclusive. They think it's like me, and everybody that looks like me. So like we need to, the discussion has to include that those males, and it has to also then make them know as in the simplest of terms, like this is what we feel as women when X, Y, and Z happens. So I think, like again,
I think that's a discussion for another day.
I understood what he was trying to say last episode.
So from my side, you're not going to buy. But I think it's a fantastic platform and an awesome movement that you started here.
Yes,
And for
definitely.
us to be part of
Thank you for having us.
this discussion. Hence the reason why I also invited Tuli for a female's voice to be heard
Yeah.
in the space. And
It's actually the first time we have a female.
Woo! The first one.
Virginity broken.
so yeah, I mean, there's so many nuances towards this topic, and I hope that is not the last time.
No,
Now
no,
we'll
this
definitely
one
have you guys
will
on
be.
just when
so
it comes up,
we've
stuff like that.
so we've been talking about religion and spirituality and the how it affects or how it runs in our governmental institution and stuff like that. So there's a lot of other important how we should zoom in on other themes in this topic. But I just want to say thank you for this opportunity for us to
thank you for
for
I
our
think next
voices
time
to
we
be
can
heard.
work on a better acronym because the LGB it doesn't flow from the. We can work on something else.
Yeah, but there's also the umbrella term, and there's sometimes the word queer, where people
We'll use the term
Yeah.
queer.
queer.
Yeah.
So
So
that
that's
would
acceptable,
be, that's
that one.
okay. That's fine.
For some people.
Some people,
Other
but
people,
yeah, no,
No.
no.
You should have learned by now.
No.
No.
joking, guys. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So basically, in closing, another episode of the Babbling Heads podcast. We would like to thank Tuli and Zain. This will not be the last time that we will see you guys here. I think as a country, we've got far to go still. As a city, as a country, we've
As
got
a humanity itself.
as
Yeah,
humanity, we've got a far way to go, but we are getting there one day at a time. I also think that I think the heterosexual community out there, put yourselves in this space. For instance, Zain is a colored man, so he has issues to deal with where that's concerned, and then on top of it, he's gay. So he's got double the dosage that he needs to deal with. If Zain was a black man, I would say the same thing. There's discrimination first based on his color and background, and now then he gets the discrimination based on his sexual preference. Just think about it.
Cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
till the next one.
Till the next
episode.
Babbling Heads podcast.
Peace.
Peace.